somewhere during the middle of this past week, I became very focused on the problem that we all face that really is the story of our lives. It's really the story that traps us. We identify so completely with who we think we are, with the drama, the hope, the ambition, the excitement, the fear, the disappointment that most of our lives contain, that the idea of extricating ourselves from this drama seems almost impossible. And I really do look at many people, excuse me, and I go, how will they ever do it? Their lives are so enmeshed in the tragic, in the remarkably sad situations of so many lives. And I also see the opposite. I see people who have arrived at such levels of attainment and success that nothing in them wants to let go. So one way or another, having and not having, getting and not getting, are equal traps for people. And I call them traps because the revelation of enlightenment or awakening is that you are not your story. You are that which is observing and, in a certain sense, living the story. But the story really becomes its very best version when you find a lightness of touch, a relaxation, a clarity of who you are, of what you're doing, of what this journey is and has been. That's why so much of the teaching of spiritual work is about surrender and letting go and acceptance and forgiveness and turning the other cheek. These are all mechanisms for freeing yourself from the drama of who and what you think you are. It's a process. Spiritual freedom is a process. And it has to begin somewhere. And many people I meet, it hasn't begun. They just are not even clued into the idea that there is something that can liberate them from their story, from their drama, from their pain and suffering, or their illusion or delusion. Nothing has reared its head, or if it has, it hasn't been acknowledged, it hasn't been witnessed. Sometimes we're given wonderful teachers or wonderful teachings in our lives. I mean, who knows? You sit through philosophy classes in college and, you may have heard some of the best philosophy ever expressed, but nothing, it was just a test to take. It was just something you had to learn it to regurgitate. Or you may have been in a synagogue or a church or a temple or a mosque somewhere and somebody said something that truly would have liberated you if you were listening. But you missed it. But for most people pursuing what you might call a spiritual life, a meditative life, even a religious life, there's usually an inciting incident, something that happens in your life that makes you go, is this all there is? Isn't there something more than this? It's an important moment, because that's the moment where you start to seek something else, something that will release you from the entrapment that you feel, the sense that life is not satisfying in and of itself, that the material side of life is wanting, something is not being offered that you need. And there are so many stages in this life that bring you to that point. I see so many people who realize along the way that they're not going to get what they want. And there's something very sad and difficult about that. And I see many people who get what they want and realize it didn't give them what they wanted. Both of those moments are important because you go, well then what else is there? And if you're lucky, you stumble upon something like this practice. And there are lots of them out there, so this isn't the only approach, this isn't the only one. But you stumble upon this, the beginning of the search. And it's kind of a predictable journey, actually. You may end up at Barnes & Nobles or on Amazon or somewhere looking up self-help or spiritual life, or you may turn on Oprah and see somebody speaking, Eckhart, or somebody talking about spirituality, and you go, let me look into that. It's the beginning. It's the starting of a process that you can either embrace with a great deal of fervor and excitement, or just pure curiosity. But once you enter onto that path, it becomes a matter of how real is this? What is the likelihood that those who stumble upon this path will actually get somewhere? And what does it mean anyway to get somewhere? For many people, getting somewhere is you will attain peace. You will attain some kind of release from your suffering. You will attain knowledge and wisdom. And then as you go deeper into this journey, people who commit to it for a very long time start to have momentary glimpses of peace and joy and wisdom and insight and clarity. But they just come for a little while. Some come in a flash. Some come and they stay with you for a bit. Sometimes you're sitting in a meditation class and you go, wow, this is beautiful. This is so simple. I get it. It's all peaceful. And then the class is over and you go, and it's completely gone. Completely gone. And you go, well, how can I hold on to it? And so you spend years trying to figure out, if I sit harder, longer, if I take a 10-day meditation class, then I'll hold on to it longer. And maybe in those 10 days of meditating, you will get more time with this. But when that's over and you come back into the world and you go back to your partner, or you see your mother or your mother-in-law or whoever, and you start to go, we're crazy again, it's all gone. You go, well, what did I do wrong? And then something, and you will say, maybe a 30-day retreat or a 60-day retreat, you know? And that will do it. And you even meet monks who've been in the woods or in the caves for 20 years, you know, and they come out and 10 minutes later they're still caught up in the worldly craziness. It's just there. It's just there. And that realization is very important, because then you realize you can't have this thing you're looking for. You can't hold it. It's not holdable any more than water is holdable, any more than sky is holdable. It can't be held. It just is. if you live a life in pursuit of this clarity, this stillness, this mindfulness, whatever you want to call it, and you commit to it in a truly profound way, it will happen. I don't know when it will happen or how it will happen, but it will happen. But if you commit to it as a Sunday morning practice, or as an occasional, rather ordinary practice, no guarantees, guys. There's a very big difference between the ordinary and the extraordinary, and you have to understand that. An ordinary life produces ordinary results. Not that this is a bad thing, but if you're looking for something extraordinary, then you have to make extraordinary effort. And I've seen that in my own life. The entire process of my life has been rewarded by the extraordinary. My writing career happened because I had a day job, and I came home at night, and I wrote at night. And I had a wife who was willing to support that. And I told myself on the first script I ever wrote, and Blanche said yes to this, I will write one scene a night. That's nothing, one scene a night. Sometimes it took the whole night. Sometimes it took me half an hour. But I would write one scene a night, and at the end of 3 months, I had a movie. That turns out to be the first movie that I ever got made. It took years and years from that point to get made. But it was an extraordinary effort. It's not a guarantee that it will be rewarded, but in this case, in a sense it was. Of course, that movie got made and nothing, it was a box office failure, and it's called Brainstorm. Natalie Wood, who was starring in it, died in the process of making it. It was a film that was tragic on a million different levels. So in the story of my life, it was a blip, and it has a story value because it taught me a great deal, but it didn't create a career for me. If anything, Hollywood looked at it as a failed movie, and therefore it didn't progress me down the path at all. But it progressed me down the path of making extraordinary efforts, which I have continued to do throughout my life, and every one of them has been important. I've also taken what I would call extraordinary risks in my life. I have given up jobs and moved away. I gave up a job as a film editor at NBC and said goodbye to everybody and hitchhiked around the world when I was in my 20s. I gave up a life living in Indiana, or actually in Illinois, and moved to Hollywood with my wife's blessing. She sold our house and quit her job and said, we're going. And we moved to Hollywood. We had no money. We had nothing. We had enough money to live for 2 months. It worked out. It worked out. It was an extraordinary effort. And it turned out to be extraordinary. I found the right soil. The seed entered a soil that took root, which it hadn't done anywhere else. And sometimes we have to move. If we're in dry soil that's not producing results, the great thing about being a human being is you can get in a car or get on a train or hitchhike somewhere else where the soil may be better. We all have that capacity. What this gets down to is the fact that you can redirect or rewrite or re-affect the story of your life. You are the writer in many ways of the story of your life. You can redo it in many ways. Unless you can't. If you can't redo the outer circumstances of the story of your life, well then what do? You can always reconceptualize and remake the internal story of your life. If you want a life that ends well, that is triumphant, that is heroic, that is truly and arriving at a great ending, what you need to do is make peace with the entirety of your existence. You have to find that all of what you have done in your entire life is leading up to something climactic and wonderful. The most climactic and wonderful thing you can arrive at in your life is enlightenment or awakening. That, in truth, is the ending of your life. That, in truth, is the culmination of your life story. Every single life story, I don't care whether you're the most successful person on the planet or the least successful, every life story has one ending, ultimately, and that ending is your liberation as a human being. And what do you become liberated from? You become liberated from your story. Not that your story goes away. You leave it. It's still there. You can tap into it at will, you can leave it behind. But you no longer become the teller of the story, the person living the story. You become the extraordinary observer of that story. When the story of you falls away, what you realize that is left to you is the interpreter, the person who has been telling you the story all along. The thing that falls away is the thing that tells you you're the greatest thing that ever happened or you're the worst thing that ever happened. This is no good, that's no good, this person shouldn't be there, this part of life is terrible, this part of life is wonderful, blah, 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 blah. All of that noise, the storyteller, the weaver of the tale, falls away. And all that's left is the story itself, the truth of your journey. The truth of your journey is very simple. You are born into this extraordinary, miraculous, wondrous, enchanting space, and adventures begin. And in those adventures, you will have successes and failures. You will attract things you want and things you don't want. You will have wonderful moments and you will have terrible moments. You will be given things that you can't believe because they're so wonderful, and you will attract tragedies and pain and suffering beyond your belief. This is your story. You're all going to have it. Somewhere along the line, if you have attracted grace in your life, something will come and tell you there's more than this. And you will begin in the middle of your journey to seek out the more. And if you are lucky, you will find a teacher who will help you do that, or a teaching. You may have to find several before it connects. And then if you're really lucky, you'll believe what you hear. And if you believe what you hear, you will try to do this practice, whichever you've been given, of extracting yourself from your story, of allowing yourself to know that the story is not the be-all or end-all of you, that there is something else much more extraordinary than your story. And you will start this slipping off of the robes and the dresses and the forms that you've lived all your life, and you will start to feel lighter and lighter and freer and freer. And if you're lucky not to get caught by feeling, okay, now I've done it, oh, I feel so much better, and you keep going because it doesn't end until it ends, you will start to remove yourself from all of these things in your life. You will remove yourself from the pain and the suffering, not by actually pretending they don't exist, but by accepting the fact that they're real. You will accept your pain and suffering. You will accept the love. You will accept everything that is in your life. The way you leave your story is not by denying it or wishing it went away. It's by accepting it completely as it is. You will start to realize, this is my life. This is the story. And as soon as you accept all of that and stop fighting it and wishing it were better or worse or other, as soon as you accept it completely as it is, the freeing happens. What keeps you stuck in your story is you're struggling with it. You're not buying it. You're not believing it. You don't want it. It should be different. And as long as it's that, you're in trouble. I have had a wonderful story. It's almost a problem in terms of being a teacher. Because you're sitting with someone who has had almost every dream of their life come true. This is very unusual. It's a reason to hate me, probably. And it's a reason I probably shouldn't be teaching. Because you say, well, you've had it all. You've had it all. Therefore, how can you teach me anything? Number of lessons. One is, you don't get it all by fighting your life. You get it all by accepting what's offered, by saying yes to the demands, by meeting it, by taking leaps of faith, by pursuing at the core of your life a spiritual practice and not a material practice, or both together and realizing they're the same thing. All of these things are indicative of what it takes to have a wonderful life. But they don't guarantee it. They don't guarantee it. So there's a lot of frustration out there when people sit with me because they go, well, yeah, Bruce, yeah, you have it. And you can say let go of it because it's easy because you've had it all. And I go, yes, it's easier that way. But it's not easy. You know, I mean, I'm not going to go through all my drama and all my struggles and all my frustrations, but I have them like everybody else. But what was true about my life was that the centerpiece from the middle of the 60s on was my spiritual practice. Rudy said, you have to sit every day for the rest of your life. And I said, of course. And that's what I did. Every day, half an hour to an hour, whatever it was, I sat down and I meditated. Before I went to bed every night, I meditated. I found the core of my life every day. When I was offered a job many years ago writing a movie, one of the first ones in Hollywood, and it was a horrible horror film, and I said, I can't do that. I said, I have integrity. I can't do that. And I was sitting meditating, literally meditating, after having turned down the job and feeling very proud of myself. And Rudy, my teacher, long dead, came into my head and said, schmuck. He said, there's no integrity in turning down jobs. You know, there's integrity in working and making money and providing for your family. And he said, get up right now and go to the phone and call this producer and say you want it. And I did. I stood up that very second. I went to the phone and called this producer and said, I want the job. And he said, great, it's yours. These things work together. You have to understand, it's not, I didn't just have a material life. I had a material life that responded deeply to an inner calling. And my inner life is infinitely more important to me than the material life. And now, at this point, the material life, you know, it's coming to an end, guys, and it does. You know, I mean, I don't know how many years I have left. It's comfortable. I'm grateful for the comfort. Anybody's grateful for comfort. But I lived many of the years of my life in one room in an ashram with my son Josh and with Blanche. One room. I didn't have a house or two houses. And in some ways there was enormous happiness in that. I might even say sometimes more happiness, because having more than one house is not a smart thing to do. I'll tell you that. But on the other hand, this last few months I was in England living in one room, cooking for myself, living on my own, and I was as happy there as I am here. And what I realized, I'm just happy. Doesn't matter where I am or what I have. You can just be happy. But to tell that to most people, it's, yeah, but you have 2 homes. I'm saying, if you had those 2 homes, you would be crazy. If you had to deal with all the stuff and the caretakers and the blah, 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 all of that stuff, you would be crazy. You would hate it. You would not be a happy human being. I'm on the edge with that all the time. Well, not so much anymore, but I have been truly finding that producing tension and demanding work, real work. Mostly Blanche does the work, but I have to deal with the support of it. And every one of you knows what it's like to support a situation. You are all working hard. Some of you are not even having jobs to work hard and are feeling tense because you don't have the job. There's tension. Life is tension. I have to fight the same battles. I have to say, can I get another job to keep this thing afloat? Rudy used to say all the time that the difference between having $1 million and having $100,000 is a zero. It's 1 0. It's an extra zero. That's all it is. It's just your paycheck is a little different, but the struggles are the same, the demands are the same, the story is the same. We're all having the same story. And we all arrive, if we're lucky, at the same end. But luck is a lot to do with it, and also grace, and also the will to do what's asked of you. The willingness to do what's asked of you. If you have that, life will be remarkable. I don't care what it turns out to be. It will be remarkable. It will be full. It will be rich. It will be densely impacted by all of the stuff of the world. You will wake up, as I do now, with a sense of amazement. I mean, you can hear the birds right now, I hope. I mean, you can't hear them here, but there are birds chirping outside the window. They're just singing away, man. They're having a great time. They're not worrying about anything, as far as I know. They want the next worm, the next whatever, and they just take off and enjoy the flight of being free in the air. We can have exactly that. We are that free. Every one of us is deeply free. And to know that is the journey. And the journey that we're all on is about this long. It goes from here to here. And it takes about a lifetime, or maybe some people would say 1,000,000 lifetimes to get that far. Why? Because we're so caught and blinded by our stories. We're so lost in the illusions and dramas. We're so compelled, we're so addicted, we're so hungry for them that we can't find how to get back to ourself. And ourself is instantly and immediately available, and we don't go there. We don't go there. And of course, the awakening process it was always there. Oh, wow, it was always there. And I didn't know it. That's awakening. Of course, it's of course, of course. You don't really feel like an idiot at that point because the idiot part falls away. So you just go, of course. And what you feel is deep gratitude, humility, vastness, openness, love, compassion. And you look at everybody around you and you see them all dreaming their way through their lives. And all you want to do is wake up. Everyone I look at is asleep, almost. And I just want to do whatever I can do to just go, come on. And that's all I do. That's all I do as a teacher, is I do, come on. Try this, taste this. Sit here with me for an hour and you'll get 10 seconds of what I'm talking about. That can be 20 seconds. It can be an hour. It can be 2 days. It could be a life. Trust what I say. Do this thing. Practice. Let go, surrender, surrender, accept, forgive, forgive, open, be, just be. That's all I'm teaching. And when you finally do it, or when it finally occurs, we will talk with each other in a way that awakened people speak with each other, which is like talking to your best friend. No competition, no sense of struggle, just a sense of shared amazement at what we are. That's the journey out of story. That's the way we get rid of story. That's what happens when story is over. There's still you, there's still life, there's still stuff. But it's all the verb. the being, the happening. There's no you doing, it's just happening. And you get to go, wow, all day long. Any questions?
I have a question about like stages in your development, your evolution, and like the end of one cycle or stage, and you go into another one. So the things that used to bother you or make you suffered through have kind of fallen away. And that's something I'm feeling. And you go into a new thing, and those things don't. I mean, there'll be other things that come up, but it's almost like that door, that chapter is closed or finished, and you're into this new thing, and it.
Yes, well, I mean, stages are all part of the story, but they are real. And you do go through periods of stuff falling away, and you rise and you come to another kind of level. It's a little bit like spirals, because it often looks the same as before, but it's at a higher level of the same thing. So we keep letting go of more and more, and as we do, we rise to higher and higher versions of the same experience until there's no experience, until there's no us experiencing. Sorry. So yes, there are stages, but you can also get caught in the idea of stages. And Rudy would always say, don't build your house at the next stage. You got to be willing to blow up the house at every stage along the way. Otherwise, you just go, oh, this is finally where I've arrived. You know, and now I'm living in a palace, so now everything is great. Well, that palace is going to be just as constricting ultimately as the little log cabin you lived in before. It's bigger, you know, but it's just as much an entrapment. So you have to be willing to blow it all up, one stage after another, never settle. Because the only thing that's finally real is this thing that is endlessly changing, which is the true self, which has, I mean, it's both total changeability and absolute unchangeability at the same time, but it's in the world of non-dualism, it doesn't fit the models of this particular world we live in. On the other hand, the story that we're going through has stages, and I get to see them in people. I can watch and I can see, they've dropped something very real. They've dropped something off, and I see the benefit of that, and then I want to see the next one and the next one and the next one. I also watch people who don't grow at all, where it's continual repeating of the same cycle over and over and over. And a part of me would be judgmental in the past, and perhaps now is judgmental, but not in the same way. It's compassionate. It's like, oh boy, they're just stuck. And all I do is do what Rudy taught me, which is have patience, because one, I can't do anything really. I participate in trying to teach people something, but I can't affect it. It happens. It happens when it happens, and when you engage it in a particular way and you finally go, I'm on board. I'm truly on board. And then things happen fast. But most people are not on board. They're only partly on board. You know? And so they have these stages of change and growth, but it can go like that if you're really on board with it. It's just a matter of how much you want to commit. But it's terrifying to commit that much. That much change, you know, that's what produces the Eckhart result, which I always talk about as sitting on the park bench for 2 years, because you go, everything changed so dramatically. Most of us have to do it slow motion, and I get it, all of us. That's our process. So yes, it's stage by stage, bit by bit, until you're done. Or climbing the stairs until you get to the top landing. So some of you are on step 3, some of you are on step 12. Doesn't matter. The only one that matters is get to the landing. Marty?
In terms of self-realization, or know thyself, you've spoken of the identity of Bruce leaving. Has that been replaced with an identity, or is it more of know what thyself is not?
Has Bruce been replaced with another identity? Well, there's lots of threads of Bruce in play, you know, and sometimes there's this thing I've described of as Brucing happening, where Bruce just comes back in. A lot of people don't relate to this as anything but Bruce. So sometimes, a lot of the time, Bruce has to be there in order to take care of daily business. But what's really happening is this sense of the self being present. And that self, once you know it, is the self of all self. It's just what we are. It's who you have always been. It's not a surprise, really. It's like, oh yeah. It's like, I mean, it's kind of a wordless, you cry a lot when you first recognize it, and then it's like you settle in, and you go, I am that. I am that. And so it doesn't have a name. It has Bruce's name in certain moments, but mostly it has no name at all. It just is. It's not conscious of itself being anything. It's just being itself. So it's not identified with a particular thing. It can identify with you. It can identify with anybody in the room. It knows myself, the self, is yourself. There's no difference at all. It's just at this moment in time, I am very conscious of that. And I would love you to be very conscious of that. And there are moments I know that you are. And there will be a moment where Marty will just go like that, and you and I will just, something happens. There's a great big hug that happens. It's just an acknowledgement. You don't even have to talk about it after that. You just know it. And you walk around in a state of being, of knowing thyself or being thyself, and that's just all there is. And there's no past and future are fairly innocuous. You're not very involved in the past very much. It's there, but it doesn't really relate. It relates to that story of that little tiny character of Bruce, but the self is every story. And so the future is, the future is the future. To me, it's nothing. It has nothing to do with anything. The only thing that's real, of course, is, and this is all cliche now, is this moment. And it's not this moment as a crystallized thing. This moment, this moment, this moment, this moment, this moment. That'll make you crazy. It's this, in which everything happens. It's absolute totality in which all arises. It goes nowhere. Stuff occurs, it goes nowhere. You are that which goes nowhere.
You're the watcher.
You're the watcher. And Paul, perhaps not even that. I mean, it's hard to say, Yeah,
Watching the watcher.
Yeah, watching the watcher. we can all. I mean, that's where this stuff's. That's the discussion you don't want to have with everybody, because it's like, you're just whatever you are, and everybody has to shut up at some point and just be it, because it's trying to give it names is like just what a stupid game that is,
It gets confusing.
Yeah.
So I don't know if this is going to make sense or not, but in my life I have, I feel pressure. I have a job to get a job or to sell a script or whatever it is I'm trying to do. And now I have another job, and that is to find myself and to find this enlightenment. So how do I separate the two, or do I separate the two?
No. Why separate it? It's all the same thing. It's all of this. I mean, again, as I was saying, my life was always what it felt like. It was a two-track thing. It was spiritual life and material life. But I realized somewhere along the way, it's the same life. It's the same thing. You're just living this. Everything that occurs in your life is your spiritual life. Even not having a job is part of it. It's part of some kind of internal struggle that you can embrace completely. Enter into it, find in yourself the extraordinary response to that situation. You may not find the thing you want. That's what's really always fascinating about this. You often have the Karen is going to say, well, not that, maybe not that, this, I want it this way. And this is going to come at you and go, this is what you're being given. And finally, something in you will go, that's real. And you'll take the unwanted, the unexpected, the unprepared for thing, and you will take it because it came and you were spiritually awake to that. And when you take it, it will blossom into 40 things you never even dreamt of. But when you only say, I want it this way, I want that screenplay, I want that job, I want this much money, I want that stuff, that's when the mind gets in the way and destroys the life. Because it's excluding everything that wants to be, instead of taking what is. What is not usually the way the mind-body thing wants it, it's the way it wants it, the way life wants it. So you just take it as it is.
But you have people in movies like The Secret and books telling you you have to visualize what you want. You have to put that picture of the house that you want on your
Yeah, but,
dream board and all that
yes, but does
stuff.
it say to exclude everything else? It doesn't say that. It says have an idea of what you want, but take what comes. But you don't have to give up that idea of what you want, you know? The problem, as I said, though, is when you get what you want, especially if what you want is in a material world, and you get it, then what? You better have something else in place, or there you are, stuck in this dead thing that you got. It's like having a dead cat hanging around your neck. Smells? What do you have? You wanted a cat, so you got a cat. Now what? You know, it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything at all. What you want, what you truly want, you already have. That's the secret. That's the true secret. What you want, you already have. And when you know that, all the rest of this is bullshit.
Can you speak of the subtle difference between welcoming and accepting?
Why?
Okay.
I don't think it, I don't know. No.
Lately, I've been thinking a lot about something termed the lizard brain, but they say that some humans are sort of caught in a place. I say chickens have it. It's like fight or flight, and resentment, and it also has to do with what was it? Burden. I can't think of the word, but I feel like there's this thing about getting stuck in the fear that is part of why there's
Sure.
the repetition.
Well, I mean, look, fear is the stories are, go to the movies. What drives a movie better than fear? Oh my God, what's going to happen? That drives a movie. Or, I really want them to get that thing. I want her to marry the prince. Or I want them to slay the dragon. So it's rooting for something and and trying to get out of fear. And fear of what? Death, mostly. This fear of death is really created by the ego mind, which is there to perpetuate itself forever. And the ego mind ultimately has to die. True liberation comes when that thing finally dies. But the lizard brain, as you call it, is the brain that doesn't want there to be a death. And believe me, that's what keeps most stories in play. In the movies and in our own personal lives. We don't want to die. And not wanting to die drives the universe. Love and fear of death, the two big polarities. And so as long as those are in play in a very big way, you're caught in the story. So you have to be willing to go through the fear. And the way that fear mostly manifests is pain. Pain, the great teaching about pain is don't go away from it. Go toward it. Always go toward pain and always go toward fear. You can do it cautiously, but go toward it. Because fear has a lot to teach you, and why you are afraid you will only understand if you enter the fear, not if you run from it. Entering fear is very important. Entering pain is very important. I have to do it a lot. Stuff going on, stomach problems, stuff. And I just go into it. And it's so instructive. It's so valuable to do. And it often gets rid of it. Whereas running from it perpetuates it. So everything you run from in life, everything you avoid in life, will keep after you. The thing you turn and face, you face and it's done. Usually. Unless it's way too big. But if it's too big, it may just blow you apart, and that'll be good anyway. So we all have reptilian needs in ourselves. This fight-flight principle operates in everybody, and it operates in the self. It's really in the story elements of the self, and you can watch it operate. I always think of Christ in the Garden of Gethsemane, and he wanted to leave. He didn't want to go through what was coming. This is Christ. He didn't want to go through that. So it's not like we're unique creatures, or that something's wrong with us because we want to run from the car crash that's about to happen. Blanche looks at me every time she's about to smash into a car, and I'm going like this. Where's your spirituality? Where's your enlightenment now? Well, my enlightenment is where everybody else's enlightenment is. If your body's about to be done, the body's going to do what it does. And there's no shame in that. That's what it does.
And I guess that's what I'm saying is like a feeling of living a lot of moments like it's about to be a car crash, you know, like that's...
Well, that's the mind at work. Here's what I told Blanche the other day. I said, I don't sit here in the car worrying about a car crash. But if we're in the middle of a car crash, I'm going to worry. Or I'm not going to worry, I'm going to react. But it's the idea of worrying that I might be in a car crash. That's the ego mind, and that's how most people live. Their mind is always projecting the worst possible story, reacting to it, creating an emotional barrier inside, creating tension and drama, and ultimately you live this very tight life that's all based on a story you're telling yourself and not on truth, because that car hasn't crashed. Or if it did once when you were 12 years old, you are now living in that 12-year-old mindset for the rest of your life. That's insanity. Let that go. Go back into it and see that's what you've done. You've closed the door on something. You've created a tension around something that you don't have to live. And then you're free of it. Doesn't mean the car won't crash again, because it might. But you're not going to live as though it might. I mean, look, anything can happen at any time, and will. But it's okay. And it will be okay in that moment. It may not be okay for a few seconds, or it may not be okay for an hour or two, or even a month or two, or whatever. You may not like what's happening, but if you don't fight it, at least you're not in opposition to it, you're in openness to it, and it changes your life. Even people in the worst circumstances who accept them immediately have a different ride than the people who are fighting them. Pain and suffering is fighting the pain. Pain by itself is just pain.
Is Blanche that bad of a driver?
No. We're kind of equal in a way. I will say as you get older, however, there are moments that are more, you attract more of those moments. Anybody else? Okay, finally, I am leaving and will not be back probably until September. Class, however, continues week by week, every Sunday. I will say this, I've said it before, anybody who sits here belongs here. They are an extraordinary group of people. They are great teachers. They are people in whom I have total and absolute faith as conduits for this remarkable energy, who are very present in themselves, and I am grateful for them, and you should be grateful for them, and you should come and sit with them. It would be sad to miss the opportunity that each of these remarkable people offers you. And that opportunity is to keep working with different forms of this energy and finding new ways in yourself to open, so that when life brings you into situations where you're meeting all these different people, you'll be able to relate to them in the same way that you relate to all these different teachers. You will have found mechanisms in yourself to open to others. And it's very, very valuable. When you have one teacher and one guru, and that's all you open to, well, that's great with that guru, but what do you do with all the other multitudes of people in your life? You got to open. And so this is wonderful training all by itself. I'll be back, I don't know when in September, but I will certainly let you all know. I will continue to do these recordings so that every week you'll have some access to sort of what's going on, both materially and spiritually in my life. I tend to, as you know, bring them together. And hopefully that will be a way to stay in touch. You can stay in touch with me via email. I'm really open and available. You can call me if you want. And occasionally I Skype. But the problem with Skype is I only get like an hour window when I'm traveling in England anyway, before I go to bed at night. And I usually try to fill that with my granddaughter. So, but if you have a real important need to communicate that way, that's something we can do. So I wish you all a wonderful summer. And if any of you show up in London or plan to come there, let me know. I'll get you tickets for the show, and I'll be happy to have dinner with you. And If not, I'll see you when I get back. Thank you for everything.